how is that sector developing? What are the advantages that Kenya has that has really sort of boosted your business? Because you started in the Philippines and you've moved here and expanded across the continent, but Kenya has been is a big bet for you.
First of all, I'd like to thank you for being here, President Dr. Ruto, President Chapo. It's a privilege to be here, to be part of this, a small part of this story of Kenya. We started as a business process outsourcing firm 30 years ago, and about 13 years ago we looked at the continent and said, where could we sort of begin our footprint? And what we looked for is trust, partnership, all of the things that people look for at citing sort of a location. The established powerhouses in our business of back office historically were South Africa and Egypt. So those would have been natural locations for us to go to. But what we did is try to look for the what's next. So 13 years ago, we looked for that trusted partnership. And one of the things we do a fair amount of work with the UN, UNEP, UN Habitat. And to be very frank, there's been 60 years of a strong partnership with Kenya and the UN as a demonstrated platform. So we took that and said, this is a place that we'd like to start and be able to start educating our clients that this is the opportunity. And then what we found was what everybody says, yes, Kenyan opportunity, talent, capability. All of those things we found in abundance. But what we find today in 2026, as everybody knows, I'm sure looking at your small screens, we're living in a changing world. Whether that's because we're shifting to multipolar or AI is intervening. Now, where am I going with this is Kenya actually happens to be at a fantastic juncture to be able to position the right talent with AI that can bring Kenyan professionals up the food chain. Historically, back office services, BPO as the industry is called, starts off with data servicing or call center. My point being is, with technology now, Kenya can actually jump up the value chain faster and start to deliver more high value services versus starting at a lower base. And that's what we find very exciting. As what I say is we're a 30-year overnight success. We operate in 25 countries, but our biggest footprint and expansion to date is actually in the Philippines, or I'm sorry, in Kenya. We're establishing a new site which will have at least about 2,500 new staff in Kenya. So we're very excited about this location. Thank you.
That's fantastic. I do want to come back to you in a second on some details on moving up that value chain. I think that's it's going to be a key theme today. Shemal, could you please just talk a little bit about, particularly from the World Bank perspective, but you know, the sort of the broader way one should think about policy making and how that influences the environment to which all the people on this panel, you know, how they deliver, how they grow. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Thank you very much. Well, first, we've been here for 60 years. We've invested billions of dollars in the Kenyan economy in the last 6 decades. I personally, I also took a few years off from the World Bank about 15, 20 years ago, worked as a senior executive in the private sector. What do investors look for in a country? Clearly, they look for political and economic stability, policy stability. They look for market size, and they look for quality inputs like labor, low cost, and they look for good infrastructure. I think the short video you've just shown has done a wonderful job in really highlighting these strengths. Mind you, Kenya is the largest economy in East Africa, with a GDP of about $125 billion in 2024, and it's likely to get to be above $130 billion in 2025. That's a very sizable market. But on top of that, Kenya It's the gateway to East Africa, a market of over 300 million people. And on top of that, Kenya has multiple trade agreements with Asia, with Europe, with the North America. And that means that investors in Kenya will also have preferential entries to all of those markets. So it's not just the Kenyan market, and it's not just the East Africa market, it's not just the African market, it's actually the global market. I think that's, for me, as an investor, I think this is very, very important. Second, a number of you mentioned the quality of your people. It's the Kenyan people. Kenya ranks the highest on the World Bank's Human Capital Index. We have a fantastic education system. And that population has, it's not just people who can do jobs. They also have this tremendous entrepreneurial spirit. If you look at Kenya's mobile phones, payment services, M-Pesa, it's everywhere. And Kenya is a front runner in that area. I think for investors, that the advances you've had in mobile payment actually lays the foundation for significant growth in the kind of areas you're working in agriculture, in financial services, and in many other sectors. So I think these are really the kind, it's a combination of these, the depth, the breadth of the market, the quality of the people, and the entrepreneurial spirit. And I also wanted to add, I think Kenya's infrastructure has made important strides in the last decade. We have seen significant improvements in transport. The video shows that over 93% of Kenya's energy is renewable. That is a huge advantage for manufacturers who wanted to do sustainable and green manufacturing. So this is a place that has enormous potential for investment. And we, at the World Bank, we're putting our money where our mouth is. Our current portfolio, the active investment portfolio in Kenya at the moment is about $7 billion. And our private sector arm, IFC, has invested in its active portfolio of about $1.3 billion. And our guarantee agency, MIGA, is providing hundreds of millions guarantees to investors. So please, this is the place to come if you wanted to help the country to develop and if you want to make money.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad that you added the last bit about if you want to make money, because frankly, that is where capital goes. Jane, I want to come back to you on just this theme of, moving up the value chain. And I'm thinking about it for you at EABL and perhaps as you see the wider sort of manufacturing sector in Kenya, where do you see the best opportunities for value addition for the country's environment to sort of move up that value chain, even within your business, but perhaps also other sectors?
Yes, so thank you. So what we've learned over the years is that to create transformation or industrialize, you have to be anchored in local value chains. That means you have a very integrated business from source to consumption. And if you look at Kenya, we have so much potential of those value chains. Ours is agriculture. We use barley and sorghum, and it's totally integrated from the farmer to the consumers. So if you think about the source, you can do this across the whole of agriculture ecosystem, and we have a lot of agriculture. You can do it in mining, you can do it in every other sector across the country. And then that's one. So make it anchored in the local ecosystem and totally integrated. The other one is we have a growing population, and I think my friends talked about it. So every business person coming to Kenya wants to make money. So this market, there's huge margins. There's huge consumer base. We're a growing population with a great youth dividend. And to an external person, there is potential for marketing your products. So there is also local market. The third one is that we belong to all these other agreements. So you can produce here and you have external market within COMESA, within East Africa, and beyond. AGOA and all those other great nations who are buying from us. And then I think we talked about talent. So I think it all comes together. What must underline that is how do we work with governments to ensure that the policies, the regulatory frameworks are supportive of the end game. That is to make Kenya even from an education perspective, do we have the right skills? Yes, we have great talent and we are skilled, but are we keeping up into the future? Digitization. We are looking for talent in digitization who are great young minds who are digitally led in thought and in everything that they do. And we do need to keep churning those kind of that talent out from our marketplaces. So I think those would be like the 4, 5, talent, regulatory policies, governance frameworks in country, market access. Is there local value chains that are from here to Timbuktu? Right. We have very, very many. I think those would be the ones. And then I think together then we can really make Kenya great in terms of an investment destination. I mean, our investment was the first one. I think it's the biggest from an M&A acquisition in recent times from the Japanese. Mostly it's been from Europe and from the US. So something is changing globally, and we do need to ride that tide by doing the right things.
How integrated does that need to be, those value chains with other African countries or neighbors, even in East Africa, given the nature of your business?
I think the way we are moving forward in Africa, we are becoming more integrated than we've ever been. So something coming from Uganda or in COMESA from Mozambique and being manufactured in Kenya and going back to Congo, I think that's the way we should be doing these things because we are bigger together.
Yes.
And the market, the source, then becomes very competitive. So as an industrialist, you don't have to import things from very, very far. It is within your local vicinity. What I mean local, like not so far away.
In the regions,
Otherwise you get caught up with straits and stuff like that, like what we are seeing today.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you very much for that, Jane. Olivia, can I just ask you just about the export environment right now? There's a lot going on in the world, and there are sort of various challenges around tariffs and what have you. What is the environment for you right now? What advantage do Kenyan exporters have at this time?
So we bring in a couple $1 million a week in exports into the Kenyan economy. So everything we make and grow here by Kenyans is exported. And I think of us as competing against 4 to 5 other big horticulture countries. So whenever I'm talking to the Kenyan government, I've got a bullseye thinking about how Kenya's doing versus, say, Ecuador, Colombia, the Netherlands, and local markets in UK and Europe. And for me, the formula really is the way for Kenya to make money and us to make money is, one, to differentiate on resilience. That means 2 things, if I have to simplify it down. One is really around the supply chain. Whenever I meet with C.S. Lee, it's all about freight, air freight, sea freight, the resilience and reliability of the chain getting out of Kenya. And 2 is really around human capital, around resilience. We get so many shocks. I mean, all of us in the room think about the environment in which we're operating, whether it's geopolitical shocks around us, or climate shocks, and we need our people to be always risk assessing, always coming up with plans B and C and planning ahead for those plans. And there is no group of people more resilient than the Kenyans. I think this is one of our superpower. Whatever comes at us, we come up with another way. The second part of the formula is value for money. And so obviously we are competing against Ethiopia, on value for money. We're competing against Colombia. And one of the big things we've been driving is, which you're probably way ahead of us on, is lean manufacturing and lean techniques. And so we have this amazing training and capability program with your local universities in Nairobi, where we're systematically every month sending our people to operational excellence and Kaizen training, which helps us continually remove waste and excess cost out of our system, which is working. And that's what's enabled us to moving up the value chain on manufacturing. And then the third formula is really environmental footprint, which you said. You guys are in a brilliant position in Kenya on environmental footprint. Now, the interest in our markets on carbon, for example, ebbs and waves with the degree of severity of geopolitical shocks. But we know that this is coming, and Kenya has such a great case to play. So again, it's about resilience, it's about value for money, and it's about environmental footprint. And that's what's making us ever more competitive against other growing regions like Colombia, the Netherlands, and Ethiopia.
And are you, do you, for your business as well, I asked the same question I asked Jane, which is, you know, how are you seeing any opportunities to integrate on the continent in terms of, you know, for the future of your business? Maybe not today.
So we're equally large in Ethiopia. So we don't sell into, for example,
right.
And we don't, so for Kenya, we don't source from other countries either. So we have a very big operation in Ethiopia as well. So they're kind of, they run separate, but they share ideas.
Okay. Excellent.
And actually, they raise the bar for each other. So there's a healthy dose of competition, which I think is really good. So that's what's fueling a lot of the innovation we're seeing.
Okay. Excellent. And I wanted to come back to you, James, on that point about how does a business like yours move up the value chain, or, you know, what value addition you have for clients as you grow, and, you know, how does that help the sort of the Kenyan, you know, creating job creation? How does this work?
Well, thank you. Let me just frame the industry first. We're talking about an industry that's over $500 billion a year in global business services. This industry, you could say, is about half captive, which is shared services, corporations doing it for themselves and then sending it to various parties, and then the other half is made up by third parties, providers. We happen to do both. This business over 30 years has gone from labor arbitrage to how big can we get with scale, to now capability. And this is why I'm very, very excited about Kenya, because it happens to be at the crossroads of where technology and capability can now balance. Yes, we all need to bring more jobs for Kenya, but it's also about the value per job. We need to push that value per job higher. Yes, we need to continue to grow the base, but that value per job can be turbocharged with the technology capability of training new staff up at literally, I've seen 80–90% faster than they've done in historic terms by leveraging technology. So why us and Kenya? We operate in 25 countries, so we basically have 25 choices. Kenya happens to be at the cusp of what we believe is the opportunity of people reviewing their sites around the world, and resiliency. Sorry, you stole my theme. Resiliency. We're living in a time that adaptability, resiliency, durability, we're in a time where that value proposition wasn't priced properly in the past. And all of a sudden, we're in this process of repricing business models, because guess what? Where you get your power matters. Kenya is, as you highlighted, is outstandingly positioned, not just for sustainability, but it's the resiliency factor. And any businessman or businesswoman or shareholder is going to be looking at, how do you build a long-term partnership? That resiliency Kenya has built absolutely provides that framework, that base that people want to build their house on. And I will tell you that we started a little early. We started this vision 13 years ago. I would like to say we were probably a little early, but it's better to be early, and we have seen the growth, and the clients are now starting to see the growth. And sharing that, it's not just the African continent is expanding, but Kenya is really the diamond that is shining, and we all need to, thank you. I think we all need to carry that flag And just a little bit of history. 30 years ago, the Philippines was doing about $200 million a year. 30 years later, they're doing about $34 billion in turnover in business processes. So the game afoot is to be had. And unfortunately, while we started there, they're entering a energy crisis because of the current situation. So one person's crisis is another person's opportunity. And we need to really be looking at how to position Kenya as that safe haven for how do we either start off as a second site and then establish that center for other corporations to put their shared services here. One last point I would like to make is developing second city strategy, being able to take not just what we do here in Nairobi, but intentionally have the government push this second city site out so that we can effectively not just bring impactful jobs, but bring this digital value proposition to the far reaches of the country. And because of the digital backbone, the M-Pesa that's mentioned, the platform is here. We just need to maybe connect on where the business side is going, the industry, and government. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point about second cities. I mean, a real issue across many African countries. And Shimao, let me also just tack on to that. And what do you think are the, if you like, the priorities this government should have, or any Kenyan government at that, should have in terms of improving the business climate, right? Just, we often have these rankings. Lots of people put a lot of value in the World Bank's rankings, but what's the reality on the ground is, rankings are nice, but what are the things that really when you look at the environment, what do you think they should be prioritized?
First, let me say first, I think Kenya actually has a quite decent and quite comprehensive policy and legal framework for business. In fact, you have lots and lots of lawyers. What do investors hate?
Certainty.
They hate inconsistency. They hate uncertainty. For me, I think in terms of what governments can do better, including the Kenyan government can do better, is to consistently implement those policies. So that's number one. I think it's a consistency of implementation, which is absolutely critical. You can have wonderful policies and good regulatory framework. If you don't implement them, it's not going to be very helpful. Or if you implement them arbitrarily, it's going to be extremely harmful. So I think that's really number one. Second, perhaps, is really thinking about the type of policies that can help you to actually reduce the cost of doing business. The inputs we talked about, right? I talked about Kenya's advantage in renewable energy. But the cost of your energy is actually relatively high compared with other countries. So I think having policies in place that can help to reduce the cost of energy, having policies in place that can help you to reduce the cost of transport, the logistics side, and policy can help you to promote competition. Now, as an individual business, many of us, we don't like competition. We all want it to be monopolies. But as an economy, we actually wanted to have a competitive environment so that it can continuously drive costs down. So I think it's that type of policies that's going to be really important. We talked about the many advantages Kenya has. But competition is not just with yourself. Competition is with other countries. Other countries are also constantly improving their business environment, constantly reducing their cost. So I think that what that also means is that you need to continuously reform your systems, making sure you are always at the forefront in terms of policies so that your businesses, your investors can get the lowest cost for energy, the lowest cost for transport. At the same time, they're quality and reliable, right? And they can get skilled labor force also at relatively low cost.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm not sure how we're doing for time because I have, should wrap it up? Okay, I've got the universal wrap it up sign. This has been an excellent conversation, and I have not just enjoyed learning from you, but I just wanted the top themes, the words I heard most often. Number one was resilience, really the resilience of Kenya in terms of creating an environment in which businesses and investors and capital can come to and grow and generate profits. I really like this theme about consistency of policy, not just in having great ideas, but also consistently implementing them. So one person doesn't get one deal and another person gets another deal. You know, the level playing field is just incredibly important for investors. And third, and I think was the most important, was the Kenyan people. You know, everyone on this panel talked about this. It's